And the big story that we're tracking at this hour, the Pakistani Senate has adopted a resolution to respond to the revised US policy. And in that resolution, Pakistan has called the move unacceptable, targeting of Pakistan by US President Donald Trump. Now, Pakistan has also rejected claims by top US commander in Afghanistan regarding the presence of Taliban leaders in Quetta and Peshawar. Pakistan's Senate has rejected the US claim of prodding billions of dollars in aid. Pakistan has also denounced what it calls a total disregard for its sacrifices in dealing with terrorism.
Consider the postponement of any visits by US delegations to Pakistan by Pakistani delegations officials to USA. Consider suspension of cooperation with US, particularly the provisions of ground and air lines of communication, GLOCs and ALOCs through Pakistan. Formulate economic policies to deal with any situation arising out of the absence of US assistance. Commence a diplomatic initiative, particularly in friendly countries in the region, to inform the international community of Pakistan's counter-terrorism strategy and the repercussions of the region of the failed US policy, and reiterate Pakistan's determination to strengthen border control measures on the international border with Afghanistan and demand cooperation and similar action from Afghanistan and ISF.
All right, getting in WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Taha Siddiqui right now from Islamabad. Taha, thanks so much for joining us. How do you see Pakistan's response? Do you see this pretty much on the expected lines in the terms that after Donald Trump came out with his revised policy, definitely left Pakistan very, very angry and the tie is very sore?
Well, Sana, the statement that has come out, the resolution that has come out, and it's a resolution that has been unanimously passed at the parliament by all parties. So it's a big message that is coming out of Pakistan today for the United States. And the wordings from, if you've read the statement, the wordings are quite strong in the sense that, for example, the Pakistani foreign minister has read out the statement. When he read it out, it talks about considering, stopping, giving access to the United States from land routes, from air routes, and which Pakistan is a big integral part of because of the NATO's presence next door Afghanistan, and Pakistan's land routes and air routes are used through Karachi. So that if that consideration is worked upon, it would mean sort of the relationship becoming further spiraling down. We've already seen that. And then the suspension of talks between the two countries until further notice, and so in a way, in an indefinite period. And also they are talking about, to have a backup plan if the US assistance is stopped. So in that sense, the Pakistani government is also keeping any contingency plans in mind, given that they are expecting that in the coming days they might have sanctions placed on them too. So this is definitely the parliament coming out very strongly and giving out a very united front as far as Trump is concerned. I mean, it came last week, and there were a lot of deliberations over the last few days, and finally we see that there is this united front from the Pakistani parliament coming out and speaking against the United States for its anti-Pakistan or perceived anti-Pakistan speech.
All right, let me also get in WION senior international correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran. Ramesh, the gloves are finally off. The clouds were gathering ever since Trump came out with the new revised policy. But do you think that Islamabad, that cloud has really burst and come out as pure anger and something which would well damage the backing that US has been given to Pakistan all along? That might come to an abrupt end.
Indeed, Sana, we can see a churning taking place within Pakistani polity as we speak. Remember, the Trump South Asia strategy has come as if not a surprise, as a disappointment for sure for the Pakistani government and political parties, and increasingly they feel isolated in the international arena. And to my mind, the resolution passed by the Assembly is an indication of just that disappointment and frustration partly. because of the changing opinion about Pakistan's double speak on the issue of terrorism, especially that directed both against Afghanistan and India.
Right. In fact, Taha, give us a sense of now what's next. Many experts believe, it's important for US and Pakistan to talk at this point in time, but that seems highly unlikely given the tough stance from both the sides.
Well, definitely, Sana. I mean, on the face of it, there has to be some sort of messaging which the Pakistani government had to do, given, that there have been protests almost daily in Pakistan with regards to the Trump speech. Sometimes the religious lobbies are coming out on the roads. The tribal belt people, which belong to the, next to Afghanistan border, they came out and did a big rally, a protest rally. And so the government was under a lot of pressure from not just from the public, but also from the political opposition. But at the same time, Sanad, one thing that we have to remember is that there are backdoor channels that are still active in sort of having this, to work out the relationship. And that is mostly from the sources that I speak to in Pakistan. They are telling me that is more on the military side. And given the very fact that the Pakistan foreign policy is mostly dominated by the Pakistan military, and if you remember, right after the day when Trump made his speech, it was the Pakistani army chief that came out with a very strong worded statement of saying that we do not need aid but trust from the United States. And then he met with the US ambassador here in Islamabad. So in that sense, there are these backdoor sort of channels of diplomacy that are continuing, that are open, and that is mostly based from military to military contact or military to the US government contact. And the Pakistan military knows that it cannot survive without a relationship with the United States, given the fact that most of the military equipment that Pakistan has right now is from the United States. They need, if there is any repair work that needs to be done, there is any sort of, refurbishments that need to be done. Most of the equipment, for example, the jet planes, the tanks, and other small arms and equipment that comes in Pakistan, that is mostly US-based technology. So they cannot totally, annul the relationship and sort of move on and find new partners. And even if, so I was talking to some military sources at the highest level, and they were telling me that even if they try to sort of, disentangle with the US and sort of have a fresh relationship, which does not have a relationship, rather, it will at least take 10 to 15 years for them to be completely independent. So there is this backdoor channel diplomacy that is ongoing as we speak also.
Right. Having said that, Ramesh, coming to you, what happened in the National Assembly is also that Pakistan said that the United States should ensure that India is denied the use of Afghan territory against Pakistan. Now, coming down heavily of India, given the fact India's ties with the US, certainly much better off than present situation with Pakistan, and also given India's ties with Afghanistan, how does it augur then for Pakistan coming out with these kind of statements when it's in a weak spot?
Indeed, Sana, the US-Pakistan relationship has reached a tipping point, no doubt. But I don't think it has reached a breaking point just yet, as Taha was alluding to. The relationship dates back several decades, and it's not going to go off the radar or fall by the wayside just yet. But that said, it is more than just a blip in the relationship. But that said, to my mind, what bothers Pakistan most today is not the South Asia strategy of President Trump per se, but the fact that he has included India in the dynamic, in the mix, as it were, giving India a preeminent role, as it were, to play in Afghanistan, given India's decades-long development aid package and program in Afghanistan. India enjoys a enormous goodwill and popular support among the people and government of Afghanistan, and that is what is worrying Pakistan most. And if you remember, Sana, Pakistan has been continuously arguing and wondering why India has 5 consulates including the embassy in Afghanistan, and wondering why India needed to beef up its diplomatic presence or footprint, as it were, inside Afghanistan. So clearly, there are many factors at play here: regional rivalry, suspicions, mutual distrust. It remains to be seen how Pakistan fashions its response in the months ahead, given the complexities involving or obtaining in Afghanistan, given the resurgence of the Taliban there?
Taha, is that the sense that you're also getting, speaking to experts? All right, it may be a tipping point and not a breaking point for now, but it's not just Donald Trump's South Asia policy or the policy on Afghanistan and the Afpak region that's the main point of concern for Islamabad over here, but it goes beyond that. It's looking at the rising role of India in the region and how the US is now perceiving India and its role.
Definitely, Sana, in that sense, I mean, the main contention in Islamabad is that, over the years, India's influence has been growing in Kabul, and the Kabul administration is sort of closer to India, to Delhi, rather than to Islamabad. And that's sort of, in a way, that's the perception that Islamabad has. Even though, when Ashraf Ghani, the current president of Afghanistan, he came into power, he tried to reset the relationship with Pakistan. But then again, it comes back to the whole idea of the Afghan militancy, and it's based out of Pakistan and the allegations that Pakistan has been put on. In that sense, and then, when you talk to people here, a lot of times, especially the military, which is the in charge of the foreign policy, the security policy, and under which this whole Afghan militancy issue comes under. And if you talk to them, they very behind closed doors, anonymously. They don't want to go on record, but they talk to you very frankly. Talk to me, journalists here, very frankly, and say that it's basically because we do not trust the Kabul administration, because of the Indian connection that they have. We have to have another stakeholder in the Afghan, politics, and that stakeholder, according to them, is this Afghan militancy, and that is why we see that the Afghan militancy is sort of, whenever it's based out of Pakistan or whenever it's visiting or traveling in Pakistan, the authorities here do not touch them, or the authorities here kind of look away. Right. So definitely that paranoia of India and Afghanistan getting closer, and now Trump is played on that, and because of which Pakistan has become even more paranoid, saying that, we have been saying that India is playing a negative role there, and now even Trump is involving them, and this is not the way to go about. Right. So this is what Pakistan sort of, worst fears are coming true in a way.
Absolutely. Taha, do stay with me. Meanwhile, Ramesh, thanks so much for joining us with a perspective from India there. We move on to another story from Pakistan, where former President Pervez Musharraf, he has admitted to receiving irrefutable evidence against nuclear scientist Abdul Qadir Khan by the CIA, or the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. Now, Qadir, who is lionized as the father of Pakistan's atomic bomb, was accused of selling nuclear material to countries including North Korea and Libya. In an interview, Musharraf said during his visit to the United States back in 2004, then CIA Chief George Tenet showed him startling and unquestionable evidence against Khan. Tenet provided him with photographic evidence of Khan's involvement in proliferation through a Sri Lankan frontman who was actually a double agent.
जिंदगी में सबसे ज़्यादा एम्बैरेसिंग मोमेंट मेरे ख्याल में वो ही था जब ये मुझे जॉर्ज बुश ने मैं गया था न्यूयॉर्क तो जॉर्ज बुश ने मैं मिला उनसे प्रेसिडेंट जॉर्ज बुश से तो उन्होंने मुझे कहा कि इफ़ यू डोंट माइंड मिस्टर प्रेसिडेंट टुमारो मॉर्निंग इफ़ यू कैन मीट मिस्टर जॉर्ज टेनेट वो CIA के बॉस थे सही तो मैं अगले दिन सुबह जा रहा था मैंने कहा आई एम लीविंग टुमारो मॉर्निंग if it is too important, he said it is very important. एक फाइल निकाली मुझे कहा मिस्टर प्रेसिडेंट इफ यू डोंट माइंड वो मुझे दे दे अब मैंने वो निकाली ना सेंट्रीफ्यूज तस्वीरें अच्छा सिग्नेचर्स डॉक्टर कदीर के नंबर इतना पुलंदा तस्वीरें इनके साथ इनका एक खास आदमी था कोई श्रीलंकन अच्छा जो उसको इस्तेमाल करते थे एज ए फ्रंटमैन वो खड़ा हुआ है उसको उन्होंने डबल एजेंट बनाया हुआ था वो सारा इनको बता रहा था अच्छा अमेरिकन को मतलब अब मैं उसे देख रहा हूँ सारी प्रूफ और मैंने कहा क्या बताऊँ मैं इसको अब ये तो 100% प्रूफ है
Pakistani government had then summoned Khan for debriefing on his active role in nuclear weapons technology proliferation in other countries. Khan had admitted to committing the crime on television. And the government had been also accused of shielding the scientists and also preventing foreign investigators from probing Khan. He was put under house arrest until he was freed only in 2009. And the United Nations nuclear watchdog in its report had stated that Khan smuggled nuclear blueprints to Iran, Libya and even North Korea. Well, Taha Siddiqui is still with us, our Pakistan Bureau Chief. He is live from Islamabad. Taha, not only as Pervez Musharraf mentions during that interview that it's a huge embarrassment, it was a huge embarrassment for him back then, but now coming out with these details, he is doing nothing more but also embarrassing Pakistan. Tell us the implications of what he said in this interview.
Well, Sana, basically, from the looks of it, this sort of statement with regards to AQ Khan, who's considered as the father of the nuclear bomb in Pakistan, there have been in the past. It was only Musharraf that brought him on TV back in 2005 and 6. Around about at that time, he came and he did this confession. Later on, AQ Khan went on to say that it was a forced confession by Musharraf, by the Pakistani military at that time. And then we've heard from sources within the military that there have been talks about how the Pakistani military it was not an individual involved in this proliferation when it came to the Iran, the Iranians and the Libyans and the North Koreans, but rather institutional involvement at that level. But in that sense, in Pakistan, many analysts and especially people who belong to the nuclear industry and are independent analysts from the nuclear industry, when you talk to them, they do say that AQ Khan was made the scapegoat. But
right.
Bringing that whole thing into perspective as to why Musharraf would mention this right now, you have to understand that this is also related and linked in somewhat ways to what we were discussing earlier with regards to the relationship that Pakistan is having with the United States. And Pakistan feels that it's going to be cornered from all sides, and it will also this nuclear proliferation and the black market that Pakistan was operating in back at that time will come again. And because of that, there is a reiteration from the Pakistani army chief, the former Pakistani army chief, that the Pakistan army had nothing to do with it. Pakistan army is not rogue. Pakistan army does not involve in these black market deals, but it was the act of one individual, even though the reality is much different from what we understand and from what we've been told.
All right, Taha, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining us with those details.